Hi, Anti-Society. Welcome back to the Antisocial Planet. Today we are checking out Twice's Like One, and I'm very excited for this. Not just because we got like an animated video for this one, which I'm pretty excited about, just because I like that they're incorporating some more like animated elements into their music from like more recent stuff, but also because checking out the teaser, really intrigued about what this is going to be sonically. So far going through this comeback with Enemy, it's had more of a rock lean to it, and as someone who listens to Blame It On Me an unhealthy amount, for being honest. Look, if they didn't want me to listen to Ready to Be every day, they shouldn't have made the album like that, okay? But I'm excited to see what else we're gonna get with this particular comeback, especially since I don't have a ton of Twice Japanese releases under my belt yet, so pretty excited for this one. I also think that it's cute that we had This Is For and now we have Like One. Is there any actual correlation there? Probably not, but I think it's cute. Anyway, Like One. God, the photos for this comeback, unacceptable. This Mina alone. Anyway. Whoa.
Someday we will come to pass, and someday I will have to let you go. でも終わりじゃない思い出は溢れるほど Go instead of so closely together, but they're gonna part.
Ooh.
Now we're sitting here, and now we're thinking, now I really know.
Ooh, okay. First off, just the amount of guitar coming forward, even like a little bit of a chunky guitar coming in there. Love it. As a rock fan, here for it. Even I was just thinking the sound like the radio, right? It's almost sounds like we are turning the, maybe I'm dating myself, but there was a time when we had radios and you had to get up and physically turn the dial to find the channel, and you had to fiddle with it because you couldn't know just by putting the dial in the same place all the time you're going to get to the same channel. Anyway, but it sounds like that, like trying to find the right signal. And I think that's so fitting with the, again, the kind of like 70s lean that a lot of this comeback has had in terms of like aesthetic for it. So having some of that in there as well, this like radio way of finding like the right signal, I think is really interesting, especially given like the lyrics where there's like together and like parting. I just think like finding the signal is trying to have that connection point, but it's still at a distance in some ways. There's something almost like nostalgic in that as well, and again fitting into kind of the older aesthetic that we were getting, even like going through some of the stuff like Enemy trailer and stuff like that. All of the teasers is about, there was like different forms of communication in that as well, like writing like notes and letters and phone calls and things. So having the kind of like radio as this way of like connection from a distance is also quite interesting. I'm just gonna start from the beginning again because I like the guitars. Also really like clear vocals.
Someday we will come to pass, and someday I will have to let you go. でも終わりじゃない思い出は溢れるほど Go instead of so closely together, but they're gonna part. For now we're staying here, and now we're
Just
thinking, now I really know.
the hand vocals. Ooh, wow. Whoa, okay, first off, vocals, especially getting Zio and that one, there's something victorious of like always be as one, right? Having her vocals in this like belting tone, right? Very like clear forward sound. I feel like it fits so well with that, in contrast to some of the like softer voices that we were getting earlier on, right? I think that arranging, right? Having vocals like Sui and Mina and Dahyun, again, if all this is correct, I'm trying to listen, I do know their voices. I get nervous. I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, because sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about, okay? I'm just trying to be real with you guys. But I think having those softer voices at the beginning, introducing the song in one aspect that's controlling the energy of the song, but it's also like a little bit more melancholy in the verses where I know that at some point this is going to end, which I feel like coming at the end of the album definitely feels like a conclusion to that. I don't want to pull too much of what the story might be in terms of the overall album because I haven't gotten to all of it yet. But again, it feels like those connection points and those like maintaining those kind of like relationships, right? I know that in Enemy, it was more like they were all this different perspectives for the same person or like the same experience. But I feel like there's still a lot to be said of them kind of finding those connection points like with each other as a group, right? If we're taking it outside of like the story of that music video and that song into just like them as Twice, I feel like maintaining those connections is really important for them too. And it's maybe like a little bit bittersweet of this idea of there will be a point at some point in the future where they're not together or they need to be separated, or like with their fans or whatever, like at some point all things come to an end. So having that kind of melancholy, like softer vocal there at the beginning and then going into the chorus where it's like, but that's not what's happening right now, and we'll always be as one. We'll always have those moments in which we had each other. No one can take away the memories and the like present that we have, right? Like agonizing about what the future is going to have isn't going to change the fact that's like a bit of an inevitability, and the best thing that we can do is like focus on the present. Even if you're not thinking of it as an inevitability, if you're just like agonizing about a possible future, you can't enjoy the present. So I think that having the lyrics arranged that way, and just like the instrumentation, I love that it sounds like we have actual instruments, which is something I'm not used to hearing in K-pop. Like it's so synth forward, and a lot of it like MIDI and stuff too, and this sounds like we have an actual like drum kit, which is, as someone who loves drums, put a drummer in a group and I'm like, I know who my bias is. But I think that we have an actual drum kit, which like how often does that happen in a K-pop song? It's different for like bands, but for K-pop, how often do we get an actual drum kit? And it just like crashed in. Right, soft vocal and then drum fill. Aw, that's cute. We'll meet at Lost and Found. Ooh. Wait, not to interrupt you, darling. I'm obsessed with the instrumentation on this. Again, as like a rock fan, I love that this is so like rock pop forward and like a headbanger. What if we had a proper headbanger with Twice? I don't know. It might be out there because I have not caught up on everything, but this might be the first time I've had like a proper headbanger for a Twice song, and I'm 100% here for it. And they sound great on it, right? They're not trying to have a really like rock vocal, right? Like they're not going for that sound. It's very much in that pocket of their usual voices, but there's a lot of like nice closure, again, in contrast to some of those like softer voices. So I think it just, and like way that it's like mixed, right, is making their vocals really clear despite the fact that we have all this instrumentation behind them, right? But it has this kind of like victorious, like crashing forward energy to it, which I really love. I love that shout vocal too. Aww. Ooh, vocal there. Hungyeon. Oh no, okay. I'm like, I don't even know how to interrupt because my brain is just like catching up with everything. Okay, few things. One, that flip up from Jungyeon there, where she like lightened up her voice, beautiful. Especially given the lyrics, right, of drifting away, but not being afraid, like having that kind of delicate sound of being like, hey, we're drifting apart, or there's going to be a moment in which we don't get to have whatever this connection is. And it feels like some of this is like towards fans, some of this could be like towards each other, it could be like in any kind of like context. Again, I don't have the full album to pull from in terms of like story stuff, but it's definitely like at the end of the album, so it's like kind of this, again, bittersweet as they talk about in the lyrics. So having that kind of like vulnerable, more vulnerable sound where she like lightens up her voice, gorgeous, because she could have pulled up her chest voice or something, right? Like she could have done that in more of a belting tone, but the fact that she softened it out, I think fits so well with the vulnerability of that. And I love the line of, I wish I could be like Peter Pan, right? Like I wouldn't have to grow up and I wouldn't have to like move on to something else, right? Like I stay in this place that feels like magical, right? Neverland is this kind of magical, imaginative place where you like, there's magic and you can fly and all those things, right? That feeling of, I wish I could just stay in this moment, this place that feels so perfect, even though I know it's temporary. But there is something that makes you cherish something because you know it's temporary, right? Like you want to appreciate, again, the present because you know that it's not always going to be there. So I think that there is this mixture again of this kind of a bittersweet, almost like victorious feeling of, while I'm in this moment, I'm going to enjoy it, right? While I'm here and it's still within my grasp, I'm going to continue to hold on to it and appreciate it for what it is. So I think just everything about the song, even though forget everything, like we're not going to think about the future, we're not going to think about the possibilities of everything to come, we're not going to worry about any of that, we're just going to live in this moment and have a good time. And then having all this instrumentation come in, so good. Like I'm instantly obsessed with this. Like my brain is trying to pull apart all the things that I'm just like, wait, I have to actually talk. I can't just be like in like neurodivergent like stasis of loving something too much. Anyway, gorgeous vocals from all of them too. And I love this passing off where we have these little like ad libs of it connecting between these different members, or connecting the switch in the vocals is really fun too. Like beautiful. And this like breakdown. Wait, I love the pass off of all of their voice and like this pickup, right? Like this like talk, singing, talk kind of rap cadence. That's so fun. And the repetition. Oh, that layer. I don't want to interrupt. I don't, but at a certain point. Wait. Okay, first off, the whole breakdown. Yes, absolutely. Having the like higher sounding drums, pulling out a bunch of the instrumentation. Like I said, there's such a crashing of sound that I feel like having that moment of pulling everything out is almost this held breath, and then slowing everything down for a moment, that building up to it all crashing in again, getting to hear just like Nyan beautiful vocals and being like, I understand that there will be a moment in which we have to bow out, right? Having this bittersweet salute, this idea of eventually there will be a moment in which this all comes to an end. And then we have all of this music crash in again, and it's stay, right? Having all of that instrumentation come back in of this kind of like victorious sounding, or this kind of rallying point, right? Oh, it's so good. And then like the note that we hit, and hang on, I had to calm down. I'm starting to sweat a little bit. Everybody calm down. It's fine. Also, is that like the only Japanese line in the song? Ugh. Beautiful transition. A little vibrato there. God, the guitars. Aww. No, I refuse. Hang on, hold on. Just one more time. Just one more time from the last chorus to hear the note. Gorgeous transition of that like higher note from Nayeon to Jungyeon. Gorgeous. I love the passing of Will Always Be As One, right? Having like a bunch of the members singing it. Beautiful. Little vibrato in some of those notes. Gorgeous. All of the guitars coming through. I started this being like, I listen to Blame It On Me an unhealthy amount. I think this might be my new obsession. Look, if you see it uptick in streaming numbers, just mind your business. I'm having a moment. Once more. I did rewind. Oh. I love that. Hey, hey. Beautiful held note at the end as well. And I feel like having it end with Dio just makes sense. We start with Tsui, we end with Dio. Gorgeous. Beautiful. No notes. Other than the fact that, was there like 2 lines in Japanese? And I think they were both Sana's, right? I was like, is that the only one? I'm like, no, there was one at the beginning, wasn't there? Yeah. So Sana got a couple of Japanese lines and then we're like, English? I don't know. Fantastic though. Like, the instrumentation, the drums were incredible. The guitars, wonderful. Their voices, so good. And I feel like they weren't doing too much with the vocals. They were doing like just enough, right? And having these little pauses in the instrumentation, the way that they were like arranging the vocals, I think was really good. Like I was saying, choosing when we're going to have softer voices versus some of them were like powerful voices, right? The contrast of those, and like when they were going to hold notes, sustain them, and then have like vibrato at other points, right? I really like that at a couple of points, Dio was like really pulling in her like chest voice, and it just had this great like resonance to it, this like strength to it. And I feel like that really fits again in contrast to some of those more vulnerable moments where they lightened up the sound, and then having these moments where of all of the members, right, having the leader of the group have these like really resonating strong sounding notes in contrast to be like, we'll always be as one. It's so good. I'm fine. It's cool. I can't believe they gave me an animated video for this too. It's just, they just keep giving. It's a lot to catch up on, to be honest, but I'm not mad about it. I'm just overwhelmed. I was just thinking too that in the little like teaser for this video, it seemed like we almost had the crossing over point, right, from like reality into another world, and then we have the Peter Pan lyric, right, crossing over into Neverland. So I just think that's interesting that it feels like there's this like escapism from like reality into these other places. Even in Enemy, we had this feeling of like escapism or these kind of like liminal spaces that aren't really in a specific place or time. Anyway.
Someday we will come to pass, and someday I will have to let you go.
Ooh, the lineup of that shot. Cute. You're taking this surprisingly chill. But okay, I love that we have the instrumentation coming in when it's like that connection. And I love the lineup shot where it's like looking at it, almost like going to like school, like into a classroom. All of these other people like talking and like having all these things going on in their life, and then being the person who's seeing it through this like almost looking stricken with having to be there, right? Like struggling, feeling that like anxiety of not only being in that setting, but also having to be like on in some ways, right? Like we have them here in the dark by themselves, and they can be a little bit more expressive. We see a little bit more of that break in this point, as opposed to like being in a public place where it's like, you feel like you need to at least pretend, right? And maybe escaping somewhere where like you don't have to pretend, and you are able to kind of like escape from all the things that are causing all those anxieties. This is such a cute little fairy. It reminds me of their little like toys that they have, little hearts. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head, I'm sorry. Cute. Ooh. Okay, cool transition, like the wipe screen. It looks like we're older. Maybe a little nervous, like being a sweat. But I think it's interesting that we had the like tripping, falling, and then being upset, right? This idea of it's not going to be like smooth sailing, but at least you have something that brings you back to remembering like what makes you happy, or even being like outside in the sunshine, right? These things that kind of spark joy in us, right? Having this kind of like little fairy that's kind of like magical and otherworldly and all of that. Like I was kind of saying with the like Peter Pan line, right? This idea of being pulled into a world like Neverland where you can escape from everything, but also there's like this feeling of like magic and possibilities and imagination. But even in those moments where you are feeling happy, where you are better, doesn't mean that like you're never going to have a moment where you need to pick yourself back up again. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think that so many of us feel like maybe I'm speaking for myself. I shouldn't speak on like everybody, but I know I definitely have moments where like, I feel like I should always just be like, fine. Oh, I went through like struggling with things like anxiety or like panic attacks and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine now. I've totally figured it out. And then I'll have a moment and I'm like, oh no, I've failed in some way, even though I haven't. It's just like dealing with life and the world, right? Remembering that even if you trip and fall, it doesn't mean that you can't get back up again, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have that kind of helping hand and that you shouldn't hold on to that like whimsy in a way, right? I love that cut on the like, hey, hey. Having to leave without the kind of support. We have friends? Actual friends? Cute. I like also that we have the like friends, right, in contrast to what I was saying before of like going to school and feeling like other people have friends but the like protagonist doesn't, and then having this like more of a support system of it. I was just thinking, oh, we have her growing up and then giving some of the lyrics of the song of knowing that at some point you're gonna have to move on and not have that like comfort thing, right? Like in this case it's this little like fairy plushies around and stuff, like having something that kind of like, brings you like that comfort, but at a certain point you grow out of that or you're able to like move on to it, right? Like the kind of maturing. And I feel like that's a really interesting image too, especially given like some of the stuff that feels like it's going in with Twice, of them being like talking about them being as a group or like connecting with their fans or whatever, saying, hey, at a certain point inevitably things come to an end, and even when that happens it's just about growing up into the next thing, right? It's just like entering into the next part of your life. It doesn't disappear, right? We'll always have Twice music. We'll always have memories of them. They'll always have memories of like each other and the work that they did together, right? None of that disappears just because you move forward with something else. But it's maybe we're going into a little bit of that bittersweetness of growing past the point of needing this kind of like little fairy helper, which doesn't seem like it's glowing as much as it was before. Is that like connecting their numbers to be like, we have friends now? Cute. Always there. Did the eyes change? Yes. See, I was like, I feel like the little fairy isn't glowing as much, and then the eyes changed color. Oh no, is the magic going away? That makes me anxious. Why am I already emotionally attached? Is it because the contacts? It looked like we had some of those. Even that, like, on her phone. That was cute. Ooh, that's interesting too, to have the like eye change, but then also the lineup of the shot of instead of her holding this kind of like little fairy creature and talking to them, to instead be like on their phone because they're like talking with like friends or like other people, and having the flashing like in and out of not being able to see them the same way, right? Because you're like moving on, you have like other things in your life, there's other things that are helping you. I don't know, you feel like a little bit more in control of your life too. I feel like that's some of this too, is like growing up is just like figuring out that you have a little bit more like autonomy, which can be scary. Again, say as someone with anxiety, I do get like a little bit nervous about the fact that I am in charge, but at the same time it means that there are so many possibilities, and like you have so much more like input into your life, right? As opposed to like when you're younger, maybe I'm just speaking from like me, I went to a really small school when I was growing up, that like I didn't really have a ton of choice in who I was around and who I could pick from as friends, because it was a tiny school and I lived in the middle of nowhere. Whereas like when I went to university, I like moved into a city and there were so many people around and I had so much more like people that I could interact with and actually find people that I connected with a lot better. So I think it's really interesting to have this almost like a coming of age in parallel to some of the stuff that I was talking about in the song, right? And there's so many things in our times in our life where it's we can love something and appreciate the memories and love the experience that we had and also move on, right? Graduating or moving on from a friend group or coming of age or meeting certain like milestones, right? Whatever it might be, that you can appreciate like the memories and have like nostalgia and fondness for them and also be ready to move on to something else in your life, right?
No matter what our love becomes, the two of us will always be like one.
POV is cool.
We're like a pretty piece of art, tearing
We looking for our lost friend? Oh, do we miss our friend? Ooh, even the like rewind, right? And like I was saying, you can still have like nostalgia for those things, right? Like just because you're at a point where like you don't need something in your life the same way that you used to, right? Connecting to some of this, I definitely have some like bands that I absolutely loved when I was like 14, 15, right? Music that I adored so much. I listened to it like every day, right? Just like constantly listening to the same songs over and over again. And it doesn't mean that I never go back and listen to those albums. I don't have the same kind of need to ground myself in those albums the way that I used to, which is totally fine. Or like certain like comfort things in our life, like comfort media, like books, TV shows, music, like whatever it might be. Just because you don't turn to those things all the time doesn't mean that you don't have a certain nostalgia for them, right? Doesn't mean you don't miss them sometimes. Doesn't mean that there aren't moments in which you go back to those things that remind you of a previous time, right? I think it's the reason we have like photos and videos and keepsakes, right? It's the reason that when you visit somewhere, you probably have like some kind of token to remind you of the fact that you were there, like that you've done some kind of like accomplishment in your life, right? So we all come back to those, right? The sentimentality of that. I'm like oddly emotionally attached to this little creature with the like matching hairpin. Ooh. Trip again, but like the other direction. She tripped on her back before. She's tripping forward here. Cute. Closure? Maybe? Ooh. So interesting too to have the like directionality. We had the tripping, right? Where I talked about before. We had her tripping backwards, right? Falling on her back. And then this one, she's tripping forward. And I think that's so interesting too, is that like the directionality of that, feeling like you're falling backwards feels more like you need the support. You need somebody to help you up, you know? That's like a backwards motion as opposed to like tripping forward, which is even when you are going on to something new in your life, even when you're trying something new, doesn't mean that it's going to be like perfect. I think that we've all like stumbled our way through a new skill or a new like situation or whatever, right? Every time you have to like try something for the first time or do something that you don't have a lot of experience with, there's going to be like bumps in the road, right? So I feel like that's a great metaphor for falling forward instead, because she's like moving on in her life. She's like going on to new things and like having her friends there as support, both in like offering to help her up, and then at the end when she's like upset and they're all there to like, support her and help her, is like what she was getting from this like little fairy creature, and now she has all of the other parts of her life that are helping her. And again, that doesn't mean that you don't hold on to some of those like support systems, but at a certain point you need like the closure. And I like that we have the directionality of running in the other direction, running in the same direction as we had before, right? Running from like the left part of the screen to the right. We had that like earlier, and now we have that here as well when she's like walking off with her friends, and we have like a hesitation, but she still walks forward, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you don't have moments of being scared or again, like wanting to hold on to something. Even if you have closure with something, you still have that nostalgia. Like I was saying, like you can have completely moved on to a different part of your life and you can still like reminisce about certain things. Even coming from this, like sometimes I drive past my old school and I'm like, I'm a little bit nostalgic. Do I love everything about going to school? No. Do I want to be anywhere near any of that now? No, that'd be weird. I'm a full grown adult, right? I'm totally moved on. I don't want anything to do with anything that was going on in my early school days. But now, when I do have moments of remembering, I'm not like completely against the nostalgia of those memories. I'm fine with moving on with my life and not ruminating in those things. So it's, even though you can move on from something and have that closure, there's still those moments of remembering and being fond and being like sentimental for it. And I think that was just, it was fun that we got like a little animated video and like a little coming of age story, which I feel like is a great metaphor for some of the stuff that they're talking about, like the growing pains of having to move on from a previous point in your life, right? This is kind of going from like being like a younger child into what seems more like teenage years and like beyond and stuff. But I feel like that can be like any point in your life, right? You can look back at any point in your life and you were like, I was so young, and moving forward, like it can always feel like you're going through that cycle of being new at something and feeling childish in the way that you understand this new thing. And then you grow to a point of understanding it and then moving on to the next thing, right? It's this cycle of trying new things and acclimating and then having to move on to the next thing. But really fun song. I love that we got a little video, really like beautiful moments in this too, just like the artwork and everything in it as well. So this might be like my new favorite Twice song that I've ever heard in my entire existence, and that's totally fine. Speaking of like cycles of moving on to new things, whatever might have been my favorite song before, maybe I need to move on to a new favorite song. It's fine. It happens like every comeback. But I think that having this at the end of the album is really fun. Again, I don't have the full context yet of all the other songs. I might have more thoughts about this song once I've actually listened to the rest of the Enemy album. But I think in contrast to Enemy is really interesting. Of this, Enemy is more about struggling and also wanting to struggle, right? Wanting to put up a fight with some of the things that are going on and wanting to be able to make peace with a lot of those things and self-love and all of that, right? And then having this song be about being able to like move on from things, right? Again, some closure and being like, hey, we'll always have this moment and I want to sit in it for a while before I have to move on, right? Like I know that there's an inevitable moment in which I have to give something up, but I don't want to right now. And I'm just going to enjoy this moment as it lasts. And then when the moment comes where I have to let go, I will. I think that's really interesting in contrast to some of the things that were going on with not only Enemy, like the song and the music video, but also all of the kind of teaser stuff before it came out, right? Even like the trailer was being stuck in a lot of ways, right? Like them all being their own little rooms and they were all stuck struggling with their own things and trying to hide things away and put up like a facade that made sense and they could hold up. And then this song is about like letting go and knowing that's going to happen and cherishing what you have in this moment and then also like being able to move on from it. So I think that's really interesting, and I'm gonna be interested to see how that kind of ties in to some of the overall album from this release. But I hope you enjoyed listening to that along with me. You can click this playlist to go to my previous reactions, or you can subscribe to miss next time I post a Twice reaction. I will see you in the next video. Bye.